In today's video, we will discuss the importance of silence. We will see how it can help us avoid conflicts, preserve our inner peace, and draw us closer to God. For this, we will be inspired by the lessons of one of the wisest men who ever lived, King Solomon. Solomon was the third king of Israel, son of David and Bathsheba. He reigned for about 40 years, known for his wealth, intelligence, and justice. In addition, he was a renowned author, writing several books of the Bible, such as Proverbs, Ecclesiastes, and Song of Songs. In his writings, Solomon left numerous teachings on how to face life situations, especially in the use of words. Solomon understood that words have great power both for good and for evil. He knew that they can build or destroy, bless or curse, heal or hurt. Therefore, he taught us to use words with care, moderation, and wisdom, and often this means knowing when to remain silent. We live in a noisy world where we are constantly bombarded with information, opinions, and stimuli. It seems we are always being pressured to speak, to express ourselves, to comment on everything. But is this really necessary? Is it really beneficial? Solomon shows us that it is not. He teaches us that there are times when it is better to be silent than to speak, to listen rather than respond, to reflect rather than react. Silence can be a form of respect, humility, prudence, and wisdom. Let's now look at 7 lessons from Solomon on the power of silence, based on some verses from his books. The first lesson is that silence avoids quarrels and offenses. Imagine yourself at a banquet in King Solomon's palace, where the great ones of the earth gather to discuss and debate. The tension in the air is palpable, for amid so much wisdom, any misplaced word could ignite a debate. Solomon, with his penetrating and serene gaze, observes the discussions, always ready to intervene with a valuable teaching. He recalls one of the many proverbs he wrote, "He who answers before listening, that is his folly and his shame." Proverbs 18:13. How often in our haste to be heard do we speak without really listening? Solomon knew that true wisdom lies in first understanding before seeking to be understood. By listening attentively, we avoid misunderstandings and offenses that could easily be diffused with a little patience. On another occasion, Solomon, seeing a heated argument, calmly recited, "A gentle answer turns away wrath, but a harsh word stirs up anger." Proverbs 15:1. He deeply understood the power of kind words and how they can soften even the hardest hearts. In the midst of an emotional storm, a simple silence or a gentle word has the power to calm tempers and restore harmony. Solomon also taught us that he who guards his mouth and his tongue keeps himself from calamity. Proverbs 21:23. In a world where words are weapons, he showed us that the ability to control the tongue is a protection for the soul. When we remain silent instead of reacting impulsively, we preserve not only peace with others but also our inner peace. Even the fool, says Solomon, is thought wise if he keeps silent and discerning if he holds his tongue. Proverbs 17:28. This brilliant observation reveals that silence can confer an appearance of wisdom and intelligence, even when we feel insecure. In moments of uncertainty, opting for silence can avoid unnecessary quarrels and preserve our respect before others. Therefore, when reflecting on the power of silence, remember Solomon's lessons. In a world that values speaking so much, he showed us that there is a time to be silent, a time to listen, and a time to respond wisely. These lessons, taken from his Proverbs, guide us to a life of peace and understanding, away from the quarrels and offenses that often disturb our tranquility. The second lesson is that silence demonstrates respect and reverence. Imagine being in front of a majestic temple, its doors opening to a sacred sanctuary, where silence is as palpable as the divine presence itself. Solomon, the wise king, understood that in this silence resided a deep respect and reverence. In one of his many moments of introspection, he wrote, "Guard your steps when you go to the house of God. To draw near to listen is better than to offer the sacrifice of fools." Ecclesiastes 5:1. Solomon saw wisdom in silence, especially when before the sacred. He knew that in moments of greatness and mystery, words are often insufficient and inadequate. Do not be quick with your mouth, do not be hasty in your heart to utter anything before God. God is in heaven and you are on earth, so let your words be few. Ecclesiastes 5:2. This wisdom echoed in the temple walls and in the hearts of the faithful, reminding them that in certain moments, silence is the greatest form of worship. Within the kingdom of Israel, Solomon also applied this lesson of silence in his human relationships. He taught that respecting the authority of parents and leaders involved more listening than speaking. Listen to your father who gave you life, and do not despise your mother when she is old. Proverbs 23:22. Solomon believed that silence, instead of a quick response or a thoughtless objection, was a way to honor those who came before us. For Solomon, silence was not just the absence of sound, but a presence of respect and reverence. When he said, "The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom, and knowledge of the Holy One is understanding," Proverbs 9:10, he revealed that silence before God and the mysteries of life is a gateway to true wisdom. It is in silence that one recognizes the divine greatness and submits to the higher will, seeking to understand before being understood. Imagine now a scene in Solomon's throne room, where he, in his wisdom, listens patiently to the complaints and concerns of his people. He does not rush to respond, but allows silence to fill the space, demonstrating respect and reverence for every word addressed to him. This silence is not empty, but full of presence, attention, and consideration. Thus, every word of Solomon, every teaching, is imbued with this understanding that silence is more than a pause in speech. It is a way of honoring the divinity, respecting the wisdom of the elders, and valuing the depth of sacred moments. Solomon shows us through his actions and words that silence can be the most eloquent expression of reverence and respect. The third lesson is that silence preserves peace and harmony. Imagine a small village in Israel where people live in harmony, and the sound of conversations is calm and serene. In this village, Solomon observed the beauty of the silence that permeated daily interactions. He knew that in a world full of diverse opinions and personalities, silence could be the key to preserving peace and harmony. With his unmatched wisdom, Solomon wrote, "Fools find no pleasure in understanding but delight in airing their own opinions," Proverbs 18:2. He saw that often the desire to speak and impose our own view can be the source of discord and conflict. Solomon understood that by choosing silence, we give space for understanding and reconciliation. In moments of tension, he advised that it was better to remain silent than to speak hastily. During his reign, Solomon saw how silence could calm the turbulent waters of a heated debate. He taught that he who guards his mouth and his tongue keeps himself from calamity, Proverbs 21:23. This lesson was applied in his palace, where words were chosen carefully and silence was a revered practice. In his court, discussions were conducted with respect and consideration, and silence was a sign of wisdom and self-control. In his meditations, Solomon reflected on the ability of silence to heal and unite. He wrote, "Whoever conceals hatred with lying lips and spreads slander is a fool," Proverbs 10:18. To him, silence was a powerful tool to prevent the spread of lies and misunderstandings that could destroy the peace of the community. By choosing silence instead of fueling gossip and rumors, Solomon showed that we can protect harmony and build an environment of mutual trust. Solomon also saw silence as a way to promote true and respectful dialogue. He knew that instead of speaking incessantly, listening with attention and patience could open paths to understanding and agreement. He believed that a gentle answer turns away wrath, but a harsh word stirs up anger, Proverbs 15:1. By choosing silence, especially in moments of conflict, we can disarm anger and foster a spirit of reconciliation and peace. Let us imagine Solomon now in his audience chamber, listening to his people's disputes. He listened more than he spoke, allowing silence to create space for the truth to emerge. His silent presence inspired respect and encouraged others to reflect before speaking, thus promoting peace and harmony in his kingdom. Solomon shows us that silence is not an absence of action, but a powerful choice that preserves peace and strengthens the bonds between people. In his wisdom, he teaches us that it is often in silence that we find true harmony and the tranquility we so seek. The fourth lesson is that silence reveals maturity and self-control. Imagine being in Solomon's court, where wisdom is more valuable than gold. Solomon, the king who knew the secrets of hearts, observed his subjects with keen eyes. He saw how hasty words could reveal immaturity and impulsiveness, while silence chosen wisely was a sign of true maturity and self-control. In his wisdom, Solomon wrote, "He who guards his mouth and his tongue keeps himself from calamity," Proverbs 21:23. He knew that in moments of anger or frustration, the ability to remain silent could avoid much pain and regret. In the heat of emotion, controlling the tongue is a demonstration of great strength and mastery over oneself. On one occasion, Solomon witnessed a dispute between two men. One was exalted, his words sharp and filled with anger. The other, calmer, remained silent, listening attentively before responding. Solomon saw in this behavior profound wisdom and taught, "Better a patient person than a warrior, one with self-control than one who takes a city," Proverbs 16:32. He understood that mastering one's emotions and words was a greater achievement than any victory in battle. In the palace halls, Solomon often reflected on human nature and the virtue of self-control. He observed that do not envy the wicked, do not desire their company, for their hearts plot violence, and their lips talk about making trouble. Proverbs 24:1-2. He saw that envy and the desire for revenge could lead to destructive words and actions. In silence, we find the strength to resist these impulses and act wisely. In his teachings, Solomon also emphasized that even fools are thought wise if they keep silent, and discerning if they hold their tongues. Proverbs 17:28. He showed that silence can be a powerful strategy even for those who do not possess great wisdom. Remaining silent in critical moments can preserve our dignity and avoid many unnecessary conflicts. Trust in the Lord with all your heart, and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways submit to him, and he will make your paths straight. Proverbs 3:5-6. He understood that silence, combined with trust in God, allowed blessings to flow freely into his life. By silencing his own anxieties and worries, he made room for divine guidance. Solomon observed that in a world full of noise and distractions, silence could be an act of faith. He saw that in moments of uncertainty, remaining silent before God was a way to demonstrate trust and total dependence. In his prayers, he remembered the words, "Be still and know that I am God. I will be exalted among the nations, I will be exalted in the earth." Psalm 46:10. This verse echoed in his heart, reminding him that reverent silence was a direct path to experiencing God's presence and power. In the palace, Solomon often found himself in situations where his decisions impacted the entire kingdom. He knew that silence could bring clarity and direction. "The Lord is in his holy temple. Let all the earth be silent before him." Habakkuk 2:20, reflected Solomon, understanding that silence before God's majesty was an expression of humility and submission that attracted divine grace and blessing. Solomon also taught that silence could be a form of praise and gratitude. In moments of contemplation, he remembered how silence could speak louder than words. He meditated on the song of David, his father, "For the Lord God is a sun and shield. The Lord bestows favor and honor. No good thing does he withhold from those whose walk is blameless." Psalm 84:11. Silence, thought Solomon, was a way to walk blamelessly before God, thus attracting his blessings. He observed that in silence, thoughts aligned with the divine will. "The wisdom of the prudent is to give thought to their ways, but the folly of fools is deception." Proverbs 14:8. For Solomon, prudence involved knowing when to be silent and listen to God's voice. By choosing silence, he allowed divine wisdom to guide his actions and decisions, bringing grace and prosperity to his kingdom. Thus, in the gardens of the palace or in the audience halls, Solomon lived and taught the powerful lesson that silence could attract God's grace and blessing. By remaining silent and trusting fully, he discovered that silence was not empty but filled with divine presence, transforming each moment into an opportunity to receive blessings from heaven. The sixth lesson is that silence facilitates learning and growth. Imagine a young apprentice in the golden corridors of Solomon's palace, where each room is a treasure trove of knowledge and wisdom. The king, with his calm demeanor and serene gaze, watches the young man with interest. Solomon knew that true growth and learning do not come only from spoken words, but from the contemplative silence that allows the deep absorption of eternal truths. In one of his reflections, Solomon wrote, "The wise in heart accept commands, but a chattering fool comes to ruin." Proverbs 10:8. He understood that those who truly seek to learn must first silence their own voices and open their hearts to receive instruction. In quietness, wisdom can find a safe home, away from the cacophony of worldly opinions. Solomon often traveled throughout his kingdom, observing the lives of his subjects. He noticed that those who prospered were those who knew to listen more than to speak. "The heart of the discerning acquires knowledge, for the ears of the wise seek it out." Proverbs 18:15, he reflected. In his court, Solomon encouraged silence as a practice of humility, where advice and teachings could be received with an open mind and attentive heart. In his daily meditation, Solomon considered the importance of silence in the quest for truth. He remembered how God spoke to Elijah not in the strong wind, nor in the earthquake, nor in the fire, but in the gentle whisper, 1 Kings 19:12. Solomon understood that similarly, true comprehension and insight often come in silence when the mind is at peace and open to divine revelations. In the learning halls of his palace, Solomon saw students sitting in silence, absorbing every word from the scribes and wise men. He knew that listen to advice and accept discipline, and at the end you will be counted among the wise, Proverbs 19:20. Silence allowed the lessons to be internalized, transforming into practical and lasting wisdom. In his own spiritual practices, Solomon devoted himself to contemplative silence, allowing God's voice to guide his thoughts and decisions. He reflected on the importance of, above all else, guard your heart, for everything you do flows from it, Proverbs 4:23. For Solomon, silence was a way to guard the heart, keeping it receptive to the lessons that life and divine wisdom had to offer. Thus, through the practice of silence, Solomon saw continuous growth in himself and his people. Silence was not just an absence of words, but a sacred space where true learning could flourish. He knew that by silencing our voices and opening our hearts, we allow divine wisdom to transform us, leading to a life of constant understanding and growth. The seventh and final lesson is that silence brings us closer to God and ourselves. Imagine a serene evening in the fields around Solomon's palace, where the sky is painted with golden and crimson hues. Solomon, the wise king, retreats to a quiet place, away from the day's bustle, to find peace and silence. He knew that in this silence he could connect deeply with God and with his own essence. Solomon wrote about this intimate connection in his works. In Ecclesiastes, he reminds us, "Now all has been heard. Here is the conclusion of the matter. Fear God and keep his commandments, for this is the duty of all mankind." Ecclesiastes 12:13. He understood that silence was not just an absence of noise, but a conscious presence before God. In this silence, he could hear the gentle divine voice that guided his life and decisions. The wise king observed that in the rush of daily life, it is easy to lose oneself in activities and responsibilities. However, in silence, we find the opportunity to reflect on our purpose and our relationship with the Creator. Solomon often reflected on the verse, "Be still and know that I am God. I will be exalted among the nations. I will be exalted in the earth." Psalm 46:10. This divine instruction to be still was an invitation for a deep encounter with God, where true peace and wisdom could be found. Solomon also saw silence as a means for introspection and self-knowledge. In his meditations, he pondered his actions and motivations, seeking to align himself with divine principles. He wrote, "In their hearts humans plan their course, but the Lord establishes their steps." Proverbs 16:9. In silence, Solomon discovered his true intentions and found divine guidance to follow the right path. He taught his people that in silence, they could experience God's presence more deeply and personally. "The Lord is in his holy temple. Let all the earth be silent before him." Habakkuk 2:20. This verse was a constant reminder that by being silent, people could feel God's majesty and holiness and recognize his presence in their lives. In moments of silence, Solomon also connected with himself. He explored his emotions, doubts, and hopes, seeking a deeper understanding of his own nature. In his writings, he left us the wisdom that the human spirit is the lamp of the Lord that sheds light on one's inmost being. Proverbs 20:27. In silence, this lamp shone brighter, illuminating the hidden truths in his heart. Thus, Solomon showed us that silence was a sacred space where God revealed himself and where the true essence of the human being could be discovered. Each moment of quietness was an opportunity to deepen the relationship with the divine and with oneself, finding in silence the wisdom and peace that transcend words. After delving into Solomon's 7 lessons on the power of silence, we can see how this ancient practice is a powerful and transformative tool in our lives. From avoiding quarrels and offenses to bringing us closer to God and ourselves, silence reveals its depth and wisdom in every aspect. The first lesson showed us that silence can avoid unnecessary conflicts and preserve inner peace, as Solomon taught in Proverbs 18:13 and 15:1. The second lesson taught us that silence demonstrates respect and reverence, especially before divine authority, as seen in Ecclesiastes 5:1, 2, and Proverbs 23:22. The third lesson guided us to understand that silence can maintain peace and harmony in a world full of diversity, as Solomon observed in Proverbs 18:2 and 10:18. The fourth lesson revealed that silence is a sign of maturity and self-control, as evidenced in Proverbs 21:23 and 16:32. The fifth lesson showed us that silence attracts God's grace and blessing, according to Proverbs 3:5-6 and Psalm 84:11. The sixth lesson highlighted that silence facilitates learning and growth, teaching us to listen and internalize wisdom, as seen in Proverbs 10, 8 and 18:15. Finally, the seventh lesson showed us that silence brings us closer to God and ourselves, providing a sacred space for reflection and spiritual connection, as written in Ecclesiastes 12:13 and Psalm 46:10. Together, these lessons form a powerful compendium of wisdom that teaches us to value silence in our lives. Solomon, with his profound vision, guides us to a richer and fuller understanding of the power of silence, showing us that by being silent, we can find peace, wisdom, respect, maturity, blessings, learning, and a deeper connection with the divine and with ourselves. Thus may we apply these lessons in our daily lives, allowing silence to transform us, bringing clarity, serenity, and a wisdom that transcends words. May we, like Solomon, find in silence the key to a more harmonious and purposeful life.